is Dr. Anton Kashcheyev. And he is virtual. And he will be talking about EclipseNB, a network of low-cost GNSS receivers to study the ionospheric response to the April 2024 solar eclipse.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Again, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm sorry I was not able to participate in person. It's been a long time. I want to join HamSCI community for this meeting, but always there is something at the back pushing. So today I'm gonna talk. I'm Anton Kashcheyev from University of New Brunswick, Canada, and today I'm gonna talk about a project we planned and developed for monitoring eclipse in April 2024. It's called EclipseNB, which is NB stands for New Brunswick. It's those who know it's a province neighboring state of Maine in the U.S. Yeah, and we are the network of low-cost GNSS receivers with the goals of study ionospheric response to solar eclipse over Canada in particular, and just to increase our understanding of electrodynamics and space weather around eclipse time. So we also want using this network, not only during eclipse time, but after as well, improve the regional description of the ionosphere around and near the equatorial border of the main ionospheric trough, or MIT, so-called. Our group is running a model called Canadian High Arctic Ionospheric Model that is used. That is a better representing ionosphere in the polar region with respect to, for example, models like IRI or NECWIC, if you are familiar with that. So another few goals of us are to establish close collaboration with provincial schools. So we need a new blood coming to our university, and we try to encourage students to take up STEM disciplines and introduce some search practices at the early stages of students' career. And obviously, we do want it to talk to students what are the opportunities in the space sector in Canada. So what could be a career path for them if they're interested. And on that slide, on the top three, on the right bottom, you can see an eclipse. It's an ionospheric height at an altitude of 300 kilometers, going all over the US and then ending up in Canada. And now, so the objectives of the project is original. Let me put it that way. Were to install 20 low-cost GNSS receivers at high schools, wherever we can reach people, wherever we can actually talk to teachers, get them interested, or students around them, and we offer them to participate in installation process, data collection, setup, and stuff. It was not always successful. I can explain why. Some things like all our equipment is installed on the roof. Not everybody is allowed to be on the roof, except for few facility management and custodians, nevertheless. So we wanted to establish a baseline of the regional ionosphere under different conditions, so that we see a clear response we can actually use as a baseline and to look for a response to eclipse. And so the idea was to produce ionospheric products, sort of a regional total electron content and scintillation maps. And with scintillations are not quite possible using low-cost GNSS receiver, but we've done some mapping of the total electron content. And finally, our objective is eventually study the physical processes causing the changes in the ionosphere, and not necessarily the kind of expected decrease in the ionization level and obviously decrease in TAC. But what is the most interesting for us is to see all the fluctuations coming after the eclipse and how long they stay, and if they're generated by eclipse itself, by the moon shadow, or as in the previous eclipses, as many of you may have heard, the IDs were overlapping with the eclipse effect, and it was triggering a lot of discussions in among the scientists, like whether they're related processes or not. And last but not the least, the outreach of our university or our laboratory activities should be something that we are interested in. Now, going to timelines, and while I'm talking about timelines, on the top right plot, you can see IPPs from different constellations like GPS and Galileo and GLONASS for the network of 15 receivers we have installed right now. Obviously, we started this project a year ago, and we managed to install the bottom right plot. You see location of our stations. There are 15 now. We will host in June 2024. We plan to host a science workshop for teachers and students from participating schools. We have been finalizing establishing an ionospheric baseline to compare with eclipse, obviously observing the event, and after that, processing data and publications. That is an important part of our job as scientists. And now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the equipment, and it's our bill of materials. That's what we've done, just to put in a small enclosure with a transparent lid so students can enjoy how it looks like. And it consists of a GNSS receiver. In this case, it's a U-Box F9. It's a dual frequency receiver capable of measuring L1 and L2C signals. GNSS antenna, one of the cheapest option available online. Now, as a data logger, we started from using a Raspberry Pi, but then at some point, due to shortages, we switched to something called Orange Pi. And a part of the system, we run a small battery UPS, not too expensive, but kind of it can protect us from short power outages for like up to 20-30 minutes, depends. And we do collect data in real time from all of our systems. And part of this, the reason for that is that schools do not allow us to be on their network, but we still have to monitor and get data back. And once you reach several stations, shipping USB disk or drives, it's no longer a scalable solution. So we had to install our own communication system, and we use a cell network for that. And unfortunately, part of that is a most expensive part of all our setup is actually a cell modem. Now it's on this plot. I just want to show you an example of how a typical installation in a school looks like. So we normally put our antenna on an HVAC room or such, one of the highest point on the building, with the equipment itself sitting somewhere where people cannot see it and accidentally unplug it. Talking about our group, like how we came to that project, I would like to mention that we're at Radio and Space Physics Laboratory at University of New Brunswick, and one of our projects, we run a network of ionospheric instruments called Canadian High Arctic Ionospheric Network. It consists of 30 stations with GISTM receivers. GISTM stands for scintillation and TEC monitors, GPS or GNSS. And we have 10 ionozones as a part of our network. But before jumping to low-cost systems, we had to verify whether it's actually can produce any meaningful sort of data for our purposes. And so in our network, bigger network, we run two different type of GNSS receivers. One of them is Novatel GSV 400 4B. Another one, and it's an obsolete receiver. The network started from these 10 of them. We have 10 of them, while the other 20 are the Pantrio-Polar X5S receivers that are capable of sampling at a rate of 100 Hertz data, and they do produce scintillation indices. So, as well as TEC, obviously. And then a couple of receivers on test, under test, were U-Blocks F9P and Swift Multi, that is also an obsolete to the best of my understanding. But you can see their costs and compare just for reference purposes. On this slide, on the left side, you can see a TEC product calculated using Novatel data, and it's a blue line, while the orange line is a PIXI data. And it's coming from a site called Qikiqtarjuaq in Nunavut, Canada. It's a polar region. And this peak you see in between 5 and 515 UT corresponds to a patch, plasma patch traveling across the field of view of the satellite to receiver link. And what's important to notice here, so a sudden change in the TEC, or effectively it's in the phase of the signal, are well behaved both in a scientific grade receiver, in a U-Blocks and low-cost receiver. It can also track and not lose a lock, or if you heard of a cycle sleep, that how usually receivers would respond to a sudden change in a signal phase. And on the right side, we can see a difference between the two TEC products, and a standard deviation is like below 0.1 units, and that's the accuracy anyone can not beat in any case, any other receiver, whether it's a low cost or scientific grade receiver. A little bit on this slide, you can see a calibrated TEC. Like, for those who have heard of how actually you do extract the absolute numbers of TEC or total electron content, there is a technique called calibration behind, and it's a very important part of the process, and very often it will fail on in the presence of cycle sleeps of such, and it might be prone to errors if you have different number of satellites in view, and using, even if sharing the antenna and having receivers of different kind. Nevertheless, this low-cost receiver have been tested by us in low latitudes as well. In this plot, you can see TEC data measured in Nigeria by two receivers. One is a Pantrio-Polar X5S, and another one is U-Block. And as a difference, left plot is showing a difference slightly bigger. As I mentioned earlier, when we use the same satellites, only data from the same satellites, because a scientific grade receiver would also see L2P signal, while U-blocks can only track civilian signal L2C. So that's why a slight difference in number of satellite links or signals. When we equalize them, we have pretty good correspondence of DC from a 10,000K receiver versus $200 receiver, which is very surprising. Another example, again, for the sake of time, I'm not gonna stop on that. It's just another example of calibrated AC from high latitudes. And one more thing to mention, that we've been receiving a lot of questions regarding the biases, and a bias is something that helps to estimate total electron content unambiguously, how it behaves in a high-grade receivers, scientific grade receivers versus low cost, and we came to a conclusion they are, if not identical, but very similar in behavior. And the excursion of the yellow line you see because of the temperature control. So our equipment is not really in a temperature controlled environment. And to conclude, we are looking for, as many of you, to monitor Eclipse in April 8th, 2024.
Excellent. All right, that was great.